Hi everyone. So today I would like to compare these two books. The New History of Western Philosophy by Anthony Kenny, which is a fairly new release, and the classic in this field by Bertrand Russell, History of Western Philosophy. I did not read the Bertrand Russell one from cover to cover because once I checked this out from the library and I flipped through it and I examined the language and how he covered the material, I decided I did not want to invest that much time into reading this one cover to cover. The Anthony Kenny one, I did read it cover to cover and I'm very glad that I did. I felt like it was an incredible investment of my time. At some point when I do revisit the Anthony Kenny book, I would like to compare just some passages for how Anthony Kenny treated some of the similar areas of history or time periods. If you are new to philosophy, I would recommend the Anthony Kenny one because he does use modern language. I find it very easy to read, approachable, but still very intelligent, and he goes into a lot of depth. His introduction is actually quite good for how he explains his approach to writing this and how he defends his point for why he wrote this. But if you are like a student of philosophy or you're considering studying philosophy at a university or a college, I would recommend just talk to one of your teachers, get their opinion, because their opinion obviously is quite a bit better than mine. But if you're just thinking of purchasing this online and you cannot compare it because you are buying this from like a website or something, then I hope this video could give you enough information so you can make this decision for yourself. So that's the purpose of this video, is if you are shopping online and you don't know which one you want to go with, a classic or a new release. Now my bias is for myself, when I purchase a nonfiction, I tend to always go for the new releases or the newest new books. For classics and novels, I prefer older books. So that's just my own bias that you'll probably see coming through in this video. So without further ado, let's just get into it. I'll just kind of systematically do a side-by-side comparison so you can just make your own best decision. I'll try to be concise so this video doesn't go on longer than it probably needs to. So the first one is to show you when the two books were originally published. So the Kenny one was originally published in 2007 and then it was re-released about every 2 years. The Bertrand Russell one was originally published in 1946, so we have 2007 and 46. Russell was published basically every year and then it kind of petered off. This one, I don't know if there's a newer edition, but my edition is from 1961. And my Kenny one is from 2012. Both of them could have some updates. So the table of contents, Kenny, he covers ancient philosophy for about 220 pages, whereas Russell, he covers it for roughly about the same. He goes on for another 100 pages in ancient philosophy. Here he's talking about the Romans and the Epicureans, Stoicism. So it's still ancient philosophy, but it's after Aristotle. So he gives them about 100 pages more. So his is about 300 pages, whereas Kenny's is 200 pages. So he goes for almost an extra 100 pages. Okay, so medieval philosophy, Kenny discusses it for about 200 pages, the medieval period, and he just simply calls it by the time period. So we have ancient, medieval, whereas Russell gives it a slightly different name. He calls it Catholic philosophy. He breaks it into two parts. The first part, I'm assuming, would be the like the church fathers with the Catholic point of view is where he would be coming from. And then the schoolmen, they both address him as schoolmen for the second part. He discusses his for about 160 pages for Catholic philosophy or medieval philosophy, whereas he discusses it for 200 pages, so he gives an extra 50 pages to the medieval people. Also, something to note, they both discuss Islam or Muslim philosophers. He does cover it for 10 pages only, whereas Kenny, he gives probably an extra 50 pages to the Islam philosophers. One of the key thinkers would be Ibn Sina or Avicenna, who is amazing for how much he contributed to medieval thought. Okay, so the next section, we have the rise of modern philosophy. Kenny discusses this for about 220 pages. Russell discusses this for just about 100 pages. So Kenny gives quite a bit more time to modern philosophy. I think the biggest difference between these two books would be in the modern philosophy and the most recent period in philosophy's history. They both give quite a few of their pages to current or modern philosophy. Kenny, remember, his book was published quite a bit more recently, so he has an extra 50 years of history of philosophy that he has the option of including if he wanted to. He ends his philosophy period with 1971, so he doesn't include current philosophers who are living today because maybe we don't know if they'll be canonized, possibly. And he mentioned in his introduction that he kind of feels funny about including his friends in a history of philosophy. There's kind of like a bias that could easily creep in if he includes living philosophers. So he mentions in his introduction he did not include living philosophers basically for that reason. So he does have the benefit of an extra 50 years, whereas Russell, this book is from 1947, so he has to leave off in the older period. Even if he included philosophers who were living during his time, or philosophers that he actually knew, he did have the option of doing that. Okay, so now we'll discuss my favorite part of nonfiction books, and that is all the stuff at the back. All of the helpful aids and the chronologies and the maps and all this kind of good stuff. This, to me, is the best part of nonfiction books, and it's one of my key driving forces for when I decide if I want to purchase a nonfiction or not, is how good is the stuff at the back. Is it well organized? Is it easy for me to find the information? From an index and the table of contents are the two most important parts of a nonfiction book when you're deciding if you want to purchase it. Especially for reference material, like for this style of book. These are really good reference books to have, the history of philosophy, because if you're reading a history work, you can quickly look up in your nonfiction history book, what's the context of this book that I'm reading right now? How is it received? Depending on how the information is organized at the back of the book and in the table of contents will determine how quickly you can find the historical context of the philosophical treatise that you're reading. So I'll do these separately. Bertrand Russell, his index is about 20 pages long, and I will not give my opinions on these things because I can talk forever about this kind of stuff because I'm just such a nerd and I have too many opinions. But yes, so it's quite long. So Plato, we have a lot of details about Plato. He's very, very detailed about cosmology of page number and deduction 55 and Descartes. So he's very, very detailed about each entry for his index. So we have 20 pages of this, and that's the only thing he provides to us, is 20 pages of an index. And that's basically it. These are just some other books that you can purchase. And that's it for Russell. So now Kenny, this is also why I like newer nonfiction, is they tend to be a lot more helpful than the older books. The older books, I find older nonfiction books are quite a bit more demanding of the reader. They expect the reader to have some familiarity already or be willing to sit in library stacks and find probably the history of Western philosophy map book or some chronology book, something like that. So they don't actually include a lot of those things in their books. So the Kenny one, he includes all of this for you, so he just makes it more convenient. Even in the age of Google, it's still quite a bit more convenient. So first he includes a chronology. these are major philosophical events that happen during the time that he's covering in his book. So we have Anaximander passes away. We have Lucretius de Rerum Natura. This is when it was published or written and then shared amongst his community. And he has his chronology for about 2 pages. So this is just the chronology, so you can easily look up the dates for whatever you're looking for, and then from the dates you can easily find it within your book. So it's I find it very streamlined. This one are the abbreviations, but he has it arranged by parts, so this is also a good way to find exactly what is included in each section, because these are the books that he would be referring to. So it's sort of another take on the index, but this is very reader friendly and easy to get the information, and an easy way to get like basically an x-ray of what's included in each section. So part 1, you'll find these books included, and this is how they're abbreviated. And he has this for, that's Averroes, Avicenna. These are 2 very important Muslim philosophers. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages for this style of an index or abbreviations. And then we have the bibliography, which is quite long. The bibliography is also broken down into pages, so you can see specifically where he got his research, where he quoted from, exact books that he referenced while he was writing this one, and the books that he is discussing, where he's discussing them, and which books he's discussing. So he's very clear about that, which I think is another great way to x-ray a book and see exactly what he's discussing. So for Averroes, he's discussing 1, 2, 3, 4 of his books. He wrote a lot of commentaries, incoherence of the incoherence, commentaries of Plato and Aristotle. Yes, you can see these are the Islamic philosophers. Pretty cool. Which is something that Russell didn't discuss as much, I think. So he has about 10 pages of this or more. It's this takes up quite a bit of his stuff at the back, which I think is quite cool, because this is a good way to build your shopping list or your reading list, your TBR. If you're really interested in Heidegger, then definitely put these as one of your next reads for Heidegger. That's why I really, really like the stuff at the back, everything at the back of a book. So his actual index, remember Russell included about 20 pages of an index. Kenny's is 1, and you can see it's quite simple, very, very simple. It's 1 word and a page, 1 phrase and a page, 1 name and a page, 1 name and a few pages. So I guess you could assume 688, that's going to be fairly modern. These are going to be in the very modern period. So you can tell a lot just by the page numbers if you know the basic structure of your book. It starts in the ancient period and it ends in the modern period. So you know if he's going to discuss capitalism, for example, if it's going to be on page 2, you know it's going to be in the ancient. They're forms of capitalism in the ancient period. So you don't need to have ancient period because you know the basic structure of your book already. So it demands something slightly different, but I think it's just more clean and easier to find exactly what you're looking for, and it's a lot less pages. So it's I find it quite a bit more organized, but his index is still pretty decent. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, so it's about half the length, but it's just looks cleaner. So that's basically it, and then I'll just show you the language comparison, and that'll be the last part of this video. Alright, so a side-by-side comparison so you can see language to language for specific subject, how the 2 authors treat their subjects. One thing I wanted to point out about Kenny, another reason I prefer Kenny's over Bertrand Russell's, is he gives another very detailed table of contents. He does this for each section, This book is in 4 sections. So this is the medieval section. The first part I'll show you is how he treats the Islamic philosophers. So these are the very specific details, and he's quite generous with his table of contents for here. So I'll show you how about the Muslim and Jewish philosophers on page 284. So you can see he gives the names and dates, and then he gives a brief discussion right after the names and dates. When I always highlight names and dates for key figures or people that are of interest to me, or that seem important and I want to learn more about. And then around it, if there's a key passage that I want to easily refer to, I draw a horizontal line as opposed to vertical lines. I only use vertical lines if it's like a beautiful quote or has key information that traditionally you would use a highlighter for. But generally I just underline the names and dates, so that way when I'm looking at the page I can easily see the name and date. So if I'm using the index, I already have the name underlined, and I do that as I read. So we have the Canon of Medicine by Avicenna. That is a very, very important medical treatise, and he just goes into the discussion of his actual name is Ibn Sina, but his English name is Avicenna. He's a very, very important philosopher. The reason I keep mentioning him is because I want to read some of his works. So yes, so I'll go into the similar section in this book. So this is, again, remember I didn't read this one, so I don't have anything underlined for you. And it's a library book. I'm not going to underline in library books. So we have the medieval Muslim culture. We have Mohammedan era begins. We have the dates. We have quite a few dates and places, the historical locations. And you can easily just pause this. We have Aristotle, Arab Muslim world. There's Ibn Sina. Okay, so we have Avicenna. So you can see he has they reverse the names. This is his actual real name, just romanized into English spelling. This is the anglicized name. But so this is more respectful to Islamic people. This is more westernized and anglicized. So we have his brief biography, who he was, probably biography. His philosophy is nearer to Aristotle and less Neoplatonic than that of his Muslim predecessors. Like the Christian scholastics later, he's occupied with the problem of universals. Plato said they were anterior to things. Aristotle has 2 views, only when he was thinking, the other when he's combating Plato. This makes him the ideal material for the commentator. He spent a lot of time commentating on everyone that he thought was Aristotle. He did accidentally comment on some Plato stuff because they were getting them mixed up together. And Avicenna invented a formula which was repeated by Averroes later. And then he goes into Averroes. So he only gives 1 page, and he doesn't mention his Canon of Medicine or... The Canon of Medicine is, some of modern medicine is based off of that because he was so ahead of his time in terms of medicine, and we owe some of our medicine knowledge today to these guys because they were ahead of their time. And I think that's it. Yeah. That's it. So Avicenna is basically, you could say, an Aristotle for this time in this period because he was such an amazing polymath. He knew so many he was into everything. Same as Aristotle was just into everything. So you can see all these different types of books. So this is Ibn Sina, and he gives 2 pages. And then discussing his book. Abelard, I think that's it. And then later on, this is just his the philosophy and faith section. So he will discuss him more later. So you can see in the index. So Avicenna, he gives 286, 299, 295, 400, 428. So he gives quite a few pages to this very important medieval thinker. So I guess that should kind of wrap it up. I hope that was interesting to you. I hope it was helpful and all those types of things. And thanks very much for listening, and have a good day. Bye, everyone.